Alright, well this morning we're going to talk about dewinterizing and getting the camper ready for the season. Dewinterizing is, well, that's rinsing out the antifreeze. But there's a lot more to it at that point that I would recommend. When I get my unit out, and I have one myself, as many of the people do, I like to start by checking my roof. I like to rinse it off. I don't care if you got it in covered storage or if you got a bag on it. It's going to have dust and stuff like that. And over the winter time, the units do soak up a lot of moisture, and that means things swell. And when something swells, something could crack open. So it's a good time to check for cracks on your roof. In the fall, if you'd put a UV protectant. If not, maybe in the spring's the time that you do it. But that's a really good time to check over your roof. Check your seams and seals on the sides also. Very important. Everybody with a camper knows that is one of the big keys of keeping your camper in good shape. Now, to start the dewinterizing, again, I like to start with the outside. I go around to my hot water heater compartment, inspect it. There may be some spider webs or something like that may have accumulated, but clean that out. And also there'll be a drain plug of some type. It'll either be a plastic one or an anode rod like this, depending on your hot water heater. When I'm outside the unit, I go ahead and put the drain plug in place. Depending on what kind of unit you have, the plastic plugs are to the left. That's called an Atwood hot water heater. A Suburban will be in the center. After I put that plug in place, I usually go around to the low point drains. Make sure that those caps are in place and good and tight. After that, I'll grab my water hose. I start putting some water in the fresh water tank. Now as that's filling, I open up the unit and go inside. Now when you get inside the unit, you're going to want to look for two things. The hot water heater on the back side of it and your water pump. There's a hot water heater in nearly every camper, unless you have a pop-up or something. The hot water heater on the back side will have a bypass kit of some kind. There's generally two kinds of kits. This one here, you'll see that there's 3 valves. You see the blue pipe at the bottom, that's where the cold water goes in, and we've got the water stopped. The red at the top is where the hot water would be coming out, and we've got that stopped. And in the middle, you see that this line's open. That's a bypass. So the hot water or the cold water is coming to the hot water heater and bypassing it at this point. Once we see that that is still in bypass and hasn't been touched, go to the water pump. They're located in several different places. Just depends on your unit and your model. The best way to find the water pump is to cut it on. Track down where it's running. There'll be a way to access it. It may be a panel with 4 screws. It may be behind a drawer or behind a cabinet door. When you find your water pump, most of them will have a kit. It's called a winterization kit. It's a valve that allows the water to either come from the fresh tank to the pump or from a hose to the pump. So you can stick the hose into your antifreeze jug. Now, when you get to that, you want to flip the lever so that it is pulling from the fresh tank. At this time, you've got water going in your fresh tank, and there should be enough in there at this point to cut the pump on. Once you cut the pump on, you're very simply going to go around to each water fixture, hot and cold both, and just cut them on until the pink turns to clear water on each side. If you have an exterior shower, be sure and check it. And when you're running this at the same time, if you have a little flashlight handy, check for leaks. Check your connections, make sure there's no drips. Now once you have rinsed out all the bathroom, the shower, the outside shower, the commode, you can come to hook up your water to your city side. When you hook up to the city side, there's a section of pipe where the city water is going to come in and connect where the 12-volt water pump is. So there's going to be some antifreeze in there. And that's the reason why you want to put a shot through there. So once you've rinsed it out through the city side, then you go to the hot water heater and undo the bypass. You'll split the hot and cold, let the cold in, and let the hot out. Now that'll start filling. And the best way to do that is just cut on a hot water at the sink or the bathroom, either one. You'll hear a bunch of air coming out because most of them are 6 gallons. As soon as it fills, you'll see water coming through. Let it run till all the air and it quits sputtering on you. That way you know there's no air in the tank. At that point there, you have actually done your dewinterization and you're ready to go camping. Now, before we go any further, is there any questions about that? It's all pretty simple the way they've got them designed these days. Any questions? And again, when you're setting your hot water heater, look for leaks at that time, especially the back of your commode, underneath the kitchen sink. After you've checked for leaks and stuff, if you're going to go camping, you're good to go. If you're not going to camp, as we recommend, I would drain the water out and blow it out. The dewinterization process is, as you've seen, is relatively simple. Just as I mentioned, if you're going to go camping, you're ready to go at that point. If you do not have a winterization kit on the hot water heater or the pump, they make kits that are relatively cheap to install. There's several other ways too. You can actually just take these lines loose and put 2 caps in it, but you still have to have a loop somewhere. I have seen people think they winterize their unit and all they did is get the cold side. They didn't get the hot side by not letting the bypass through. Again, take your time while you're doing that. Generally takes about 2 gallons of antifreeze for most units. If you have a 5th wheel or something like that, it may take a little more. Some of the kits on these units are all in one bay where you don't have to access the hot water heater. Does anybody have a unit like that here? Everybody got travel trailers? All right. Also at that time, your furnace. It's a good time to fire up and check everything in the unit and get it ready to go for the season. Save you a lot of headaches instead of finding them out on the road. And always check the tires. Always. If, for instance, something went wrong during your winterization and you got antifreeze in your hot water heater, just let the hot water continuously run. It'll eventually stop the foaming and clear up. It's food safe, or you should be using a food safe antifreeze. It's not going to hurt you. It just doesn't taste the best in the world. And it does happen from time to time. Any questions on bypass? Everybody good on that? Would anybody like to know anything else about the hot water heater systems? Anode rods, when to replace them? When they look like that. That one's not doing too much good at that point. Again, some of them have plastic plugs because they have an aluminum tank. They don't require an anode. The ones that do have a steel tank. And your water pump, there's not much maintenance to the water pump. If you winterized it right, you'll notice a leak if you didn't. That's pretty much it on winterizing and dewinterizing. Any general questions on it? Pretty simple and flat forward, isn't it? Well, any questions on hot water heaters? Everybody got dauber screens? They clean out wasp nests, as I mentioned earlier. Check your furnace too. If you don't have a dauber screen, be sure and look up through the hole and see if you got any nests that occurred in there. Another thing you might experience, we talked a little bit about, is mice. Again, checking for water leaks. The interior of the unit, some people place a dehumidifier in them when they're getting them out to get the water out of the cabinets and stuff, because the woodwork does swell up in the wintertime. And that's pretty much it, is getting one ready to go camping. Blowing one out They make tools for that instead of winterizing. Some people choose to do that. Here I really suggest that you do winterize one instead of blowing one out. There's no way to get the water out of the suction side of the pump, even when you're using a tool to blow out. And a pump's a couple of $100, and usually when they freeze, it busts the head on. We see that quite often. Some units are made to fill from the tank instead of a bypass kit. In that case, just get you about 4 or 5 gallons of antifreeze, or maybe look for a good location to install the kit on your pump. And I really can't think of much else on winterization and dewinterization. Any questions on it at all? Or anything about your unit for the season? Roof care, tire care. It's a good time to check your axles, check your brakes. Easy way to check them is hook them up to the truck. Check your digital brake control. Most of you probably have a brake control with the unit that you're pulling. That all needs to be checked, before the season. And if you have a travel trailer, check and tighten up your hitch work. Fifth wheel owners, check your Alamites. Probably going to need a little greasing for the year. And depending on the mileage on your axles, where you want to grease or not. That depends on the type of axle you had, and there's several different manufacturers, and each one recommends a little different something. Way I do with my campers, I have a check sheet list. Usually I put up and a get out, and I try to follow that step by step, even in the shop working on them. But again, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. No. Yeah, axle grease. Most of them have the buddy fittings, just regular axle grease. If you do put axle grease in that way, not even a whole shot, maybe just a good quarter of a pump. Most of the time people tend to over grease, and it blows the seal out of the back, and it'll fill the hub with grease. Of course, the brakes will quit operating. The best thing I like to do is, depending on the axle brand, between 3,500 miles and 5,000 miles, is do an inspection. Have them tore down and have the bearings repacked. That's the for sure way not to have any issues. Do a repack. Yes, sir. We do repacks here. We'll do the repack, and at the same time, we have to tear everything down. We'll inspect the brakes. If there's any issues with the brakes, of course, we can call you and go from there and repair those if needed. Most of the time with the brake controls, you got everything set right and balanced. You're really not going to wear out the brakes on the camper unless you have used it for 20,000 miles every season for 10 years or something. But again, just about a quarter shot of grease. And some of the manufacturers recommend don't do anything with them till 5,000 miles. It just depends on the brand. But I would say, personally, 5,000 miles. Good general rule of thumb. Single axle is not that expensive, and there's doubles and triples. But is there any other questions? On the unit, there will be a sticker by your VIN number, usually on the left front, and there'll be a tire sticker of what to run cold temperature. Whatever that tag says, go by. Unless you have changed tire load ratings or something like that. But generally always go by the rating on the vehicle. Even on a motorhome. Regardless of what the tire says, go with what the motorhome company says. Any other questions? Yeah, we've got some cleaners back here. The crown, yeah, if bleach water works really good, but bleach water tends to hurt the sewing, the strings. You know what I mean? So I hear a lot of people do that, and it does a good job. We've got some cleaners back there. We've got some new stuff in that I haven't tried yet, but I've heard it works really good. We usually use Crown Cleaner for something like that, but some of those spots, you know, after time, they're just there, kind of like the little spots you'll see on your roof. Even if you get one brand new, there's some like glue, I guess, transition. But most of them will come out with that cleaner, I've been told. But again, I would dilute it. I would really dilute that at least, you know, 3 parts water, 1 part bleach, and on and off. And maybe just put it on a rag on that spot. But I wouldn't leave the bleach water on there long at all. But it'll clean it. Any other questions? We got a lot of time to kill. Winterizing it. Dewinterizing and winterizing takes probably about 45 minutes, and dewinterizing actually takes about 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, that's how long it takes. There's not a whole lot to it if you've done everything right, and you have the simple setups for it. But if there's any other questions, that was a great question. So was that. And if there's any other, I'd be glad to try to answer them for you. The one that fills the fresh water, the one that fills the fresh tank. Yeah.
I guess it's a breather.
Yes, sir. It's a breather tube is what it is. That is a breather tube. It usually comes up to the outside, and you'll see a little vent. And when you're filling, you'll feel the air coming out of it. If it hadn't been used in a while, I would use the fresh tabs, and there's 2 or 3 options back there to put in the tank and fill up, let it sit, and run it through the system. I think there's spring fresh, and then the tabs. I like the tabs. And then after that, like I never use my tank, but once a year I always fill it up, throw some tabs in it, and drain it out just to keep it working, I guess is a better term to say. But the breather tube, if you're worried about that, the necks are very easy to replace, and the hoses generally are. You may have to go through the floor, but they're generally easy to replace too. If you have a sealed belly, you'll have to drop that down. But if that's something that concerns you, that can be replaced fairly easy. Now, a lot of state parks, you have to have your own water. Yeah, I would start with the tabs and just start with those, and maybe do it a couple times. And we have the other stuff in the store. If you want to look about, go ahead and just put in a new fill tube and all that, and have it all new and fresh. Most of those parts, the city water connection, sometimes during the winter, there's a check valve there that may fail on you. Parts like that are really cheap, guys. They're like $10 or $15 for a brass version, $6 for a plastic version. So any updates like that are relatively easy to do, and our parts guys will be glad pretty much to walk you through how to do it, or something we can do here for you too. But I don't blame you on that. On my water system, you want that clean. Even if you're drinking bottled water, you're still showering with it. I think the tabs come in a pack of 8. It takes one tab does like 15 to 20 gallons. So 2 tabs per tank would do you. Is there any other questions on the water system? Or any other parts? Again, we've been over roofs 100 times. I can't stress that enough. And winterizing, right? This came out of a Jayco that wasn't pinhole in the tank. There's a costly deal right there, about $800, plus the other fixtures that were blown in it too. But, and again, it's something, if you don't feel comfortable winterizing and dewinterizing, you can call our dealership or wherever you trade at. It's something most places do. I know here we do them, and if we winterize it for you, you bring it back in the spring. We do it for free, the dewinterization. We do that because we like to check over our work and make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. And of course, if there is, it's covered. Because even sometimes doing your best, parts will fail. That's a toilet valve. And we see a lot of that. And this one was winterized. It's just so thin. One of the bad things happens that right there. And that was on our whole motorhome that was left with water in it. And I just did that to the whole water system. And it ruined the whole motorhome. Well, any other questions on your water system? Roof care, side care. Well, you're not going to, the seal saver you spray on the rubbers on site, you're not going to overdo it. That's, at least when you get it out, when you put it up, if you keep it at home, opened up where the sun's beating on one side, I would follow the 90-day thing. If it's out all the time, you can tell they'll start getting a little chalky looking and start feeling a little bit hard. But again, you're not going to overdo it. That's the only thing that keeps the rain out. That is a really good thing to stay on top of. Again, with the seals, I kind of include it all at one time. As far as the steps go, if any of us has ever had an older camper, the steps really get annoying. I like to use that easy slide spray. I'll usually, when I'm doing a customer's here even, I'll go around and hit the steps and the door locks, all with a lubricant. That'll help, especially years on down the road. Some of these we get traded in. It's just about have to have a tool to get the steps out, But lubing them and all that kind of stuff, about every 90 days really helps a lot. Your door locks after the winter may seem a little stiff. Hit them with a little lube. Sometimes they may not even work, but if you'll hit them with a little lube and put your key in there, you'll be surprised at the difference. Especially if I've noticed on the slam latches, when they get dry, they won't hardly work at all. And the roof and the decor up top, that's the life of the camper. All as-is campers that I know of, they're not there because of a refrigerator or an axle or a furnace. They're there because they're rotten. And like I said earlier, over the winter they swell up, and when they dry, they're going to shrink. So when that occurs, stuff's going to open up, and that's what those flexible sealers are made to do. Well, anybody got any other questions? Mm-hmm. What you need to do is get with one of the service writers and let us look up the model and see what we can do. Each line and things are a little different. Yeah, how old is your camper? I'd wait till it was out of warranty. Either one. I would wait till my warranty run out on your frame and stuff before you did any changing like that, because it'll void out the warranty. But after that, you can look about some add-ons. But yeah, the storage box on the back, you'll definitely have to have something beefed up. We see several times each year, and we have customers that come in and would like to have bicycle racks. They will cause you problems. The bumpers are rated, they say, for like 250 pounds. So 2 bicycles, 70 pounds? You're good, right? Well, imagine 70 pounds as a lever. And it's going down the road doing this right here. First thing you'll notice is your bumper caps won't stay in. and the next thing is it's going to just rip it off. And we see that several times a year. Well, I'd wait till the warranty was up, and then you can go to a place. There's a company we use, and they can come up with a design to tie in, to beef it up. But definitely wait till that warranty's out. Any other questions? Everybody good? On dewinterizing. Well, how many of you are going to go home and dewinterize today? Are you? I've been gambling on some of ours. I've been blowing them out and not winterizing them. I think winter's done with. If anybody has any questions in the world about your camper, it doesn't involve this, you feel free to ask. But yeah, the season is fixing to break, and it's been a miserable winter. Any questions about your tires? Everybody good on tires? How to inspect them? Where to look for dry rot? Look between the treads. And if they're 5 years old, get a new set or check your insurance. One or the other. Yeah, well, even if it dips down to say 31, 30 degrees, and then the next day it's up to 42 or 38, you're pretty much okay. It's when it hits the freezing weather and stays. You've got a window, but it wouldn't hurt a thing to blow it out when you got through camping, and get you one of those little tools right there and drain the hot water heater out. That's generally the way that you would leave it, during this. I think at this point in time, I would gamble mine that way. But it's kind of like farming. It's a gamble. But if you know how to winterize and dewinterize, it's only 2 gallons of antifreeze. And if a cold front's coming in that hard, 20 minutes, and you're done. Any other questions, guys? Well, that's about as far as I know on dewinterization. There's not a whole lot to it. Is there any questions about any of the materials or anything to use during this process? Well, how much time we still got to kill? Yeah. There's not a whole lot on it, guys. Like I say, if there's any questions about the pumps or anything like that, feel free to ask. And again, you run it till it's clear. That's it. I generally in the spring is when I like to put on my Protect kit myself, do my good cleaning up, get it ready. If you don't have a spot to do it at your house, go to a campsite that's close. Go to a full hookup. That's what I would suggest for winterizing. That way you can clean everything out real good too. Again, like I had mentioned earlier with the fresh tanks, it's a good time to make sure and get the freshwater tank good to go. I know a lot of people carry some in the fresh tank when they're going down the road. Definitely want to look and make sure that you have usable water in there. Well, I really don't know a lot else to talk about on that subject. It is a short one. The roofs, I like to use Protect. If y'all haven't used that kit, I would highly recommend it for your roof. It makes a huge difference. The other thing, your hot water heater maintenance, they make a little tool that goes to a garden hose where you can get up in here and clean out, especially if you have a Suburban hot water heater. This this stuff falls into the bottom of the hot water heater, and that little tool is like $5. It'll really help you rinse that stuff out of the bottom of it. Once it gets enough sediment in it, it'll throw off the heating of the hot water heater. Like after 2 or 3 anode rods, have worn out. Like I say, it's a little tool, like a little water pick, basically, is what it is. So that's a good time to do that. On the aluminum tank, this starts getting really yellow on you. You can see if the heat does it. Pick you up a new one. They're cheap, coming in a 2-pack. It wouldn't hurt if you have one of these, just to have one of these in your camper. Anyway, they also work for your low point drains. And that's about everything on the water system I know of. Any questions? I guess we can make them open up the parts store early. They're moving some around. But guys, like I say, the water pump, the hot water heater, that's it. You're rinsing it out. As we say, rinse it out and kick the tires. And if there's no other questions or anything, we'll call this one kind of short. We'll talk amongst ourselves. Any other questions before we go? All right.